Did you ask him his opinion on the new Tony Martin album, or?
Here we go, guys.
Or on
Now we're
Stratego?
live, without a net, at the 6 o'clock news slot.
We're competing with the 6 o'clock news.
I love it. Stéphane Giroux, for those of you who don't know this, he was just on the Montreal CTV News, and he did his Clark Kent, put on his Iron Maiden shirt, and here he is. What's going on,
Happy
guys?
New Year's.
Yes, you know what? Let me just record this here for a sec for safekeeping.
Recording in progress.
Recording in progress. Here we go.
Let's say hi to Kenny. Kenny's already watching. So let's say hi to our friend Kenny Kessel.
Hey,
Kenny's
Kenny,
always watching.
don't let anyone kill you.
All right, today, guys, January 14th, a new Tony Martin album, Thorns, coming out on Battle God Productions and Dark Star Records. This is his third solo album. I mean, all these years and his third solo album. Of course, he's appeared on so many guest appearances and albums and bands. And of course, best known for Black Sabbath. There it is. You know, Alan, I remember years ago you were telling me, Jimmy, you gotta listen to Tony Martin's version of Black Sabbath. And 10 years ago, I was like, I don't know, man. And then it's just something that I've learned to really love over the years, his era. All right. So, Alan, first impressions. What do you think about the new Thorns album by Tony Martin?
Well, the first impression, I mean, you know, was the second half of the album. It's like, I think I texted you, what are you, 12 years old again? You know, but listening to it a lot more, it's an enjoyable album. I mean, I've always liked Tony's voice. I thought he was always a great fit between Ray Gillen and Ronnie James Dio. Again, tons of all those albums of Black Sabbath I got, including my personal favorite, Cross Purposes. I mean, it's a good solo album, I find.
All right, Perrin, I'll kind of like moderate this just so everybody, you know, doesn't talk over each other. Perrin, what'd you think?
Yeah, I'll echo Alan's thoughts, and I'll say that I've always been on Team Tony Martin. I've always think he's been a little underappreciated. Obviously not easy to follow in the shoes of all the great Sabbath singers that came before him. But if you judge the body of work on its own, it's a really strong body of work. My personal favorite is Eternal Idol. But like Alan, really like Headless Cross Purposes. There's just so many good records there, and many good songs on each of them. So I've always been in Camp Martin. And I really like this record. When Jimmy kind of sent us the advance to review, I won't say I was super excited. I was expecting just kind of middle to good heavy metal. But I have to say, I've been listening to this all weekend. I went back and listened to it a couple times. And a note I took is this. It's familiar enough to be satisfying to Tony's longtime fans, but it's different enough to be fresh and interesting.
All right.
And I say that because there's some really interesting stuff. I don't know if you want us to get into tracks yet, Jimmy.
But no, they're just going overall impressions. So Stéphane,
Right, so, yeah.
and now I'm really interested in Stéphane's opinion here because he's Mr. Purist. He's the purist of metalheads. Did this first impression? We won't go into the whole album yet, but first impression.
I didn't like it.
No?
Yeah, but you know me, I'm a purist, and we'll have to get into that. Look, I cannot deny that the guy is a cut above the rest when it comes to singing heavy metal. Black Sabbath, for me, was the quintessential recipe for how to do it right in the 70s. A band that reinvented itself with Ronnie James Dio, but it became a completely different band. But most of the stuff after Dio was always, yes, but, you know, so you had the Ian Gillan era, you know, Born Again, which was a great album, if not for Ian Gillan singing. And then
What about the production?
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other show, Jim. That's a whole other show.
Yeah, I have this theory about Born Again. I don't want to go through it, but I suspect that it's so much dope while recording that it screwed up their ears while they were mixing. Yeah, some drinking for good measure.
Yeah.
And um, and everything after that, I've always seen it as Tony Iommi solo albums with whatever singer he had at the time. I thought that Glenn Hughes was a fantastic singer, but everything after that, uh, whether it's Ray Gillen or Tony Martin, I always felt that it was more about justifying a vocalist on Tony Iommi albums rather than wanting to be Black Sabbath. You need a guy on stage to sing, Children of the Grave and that kind of songs. But I think that Tony Martin was a great, I wouldn't call him a crutch. That wouldn't be fair. But he was, Tony Iommi is recording an album, says, I need a singer. This guy fits the bill. I never felt that that Tony Iommi had much respect for his singer. In fact, when I read his autobiography, Iommi's, I didn't feel he made it sound, he showed much respect for him. Now, I discovered much later that Tony Martin was a lot more than a singer, that he was a multi-instrumentalist, and that he had a much, much broader range than what we've known him for. But here's the thing, the guy is in his mid-60s now. He hasn't done an album in over a decade. And I'm wondering, what is he bringing to the scene? What?
Oh, okay. We're gonna pause right there. Hold on. The purist has spoken. Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna say, and then for my opinion, very quickly, I was completely floored by this album. So I'm like the opposite end of the spectrum, and I was like, wow, he's bringing it. He is showing the world that he was the Black Sabbath singer that so everybody kind of hit him or, didn't appreciate at the time. So Alan, what do you want to say?
No, I mean, Stefan touched on so many points. I mean,
I
when these albums came out, including the Tony Seventh Star, those were right away, within a week, was in the $3.99 bin at A&A Records. It was a joke. We could argue Born Again. I know you love that album, Jim, and it was an album for its time. But after that, you couldn't even find these albums. If you did, they were in the discount bin. So going back and revisiting them years later, I can appreciate Tony Martin filling in the job and he was probably put into a very uncomfortable position, including from what I read, the Dehumanizer in a recent interview with Tony Martin. He said he was even called in to replace Dio on that last minute. So it goes back to what Stefan was saying about lack of respect for him as a singer. Whatever his lack of performance he had at the time, that's what people were critical about him. He didn't live up to it on stage. I think his voice carries through on all the albums, including this.
But let me say, Jimmy, if I can pick up on your point, let's pretend this was just an anonymous album that was dropped into our inboxes and said, hey, Metal Voice crew, can you review this? If I listen to the album objectively, which I did this weekend, I would say this is a very good record, irregardless of if this person was in Black Sabbath or not. Now, the fact that Tony was in Black Sabbath gives it a bit of an audience and a bit of a head start because people want to listen to it. There's a curiosity factor there.
Yeah.
But whether Tony Martin was in Black Sabbath or not, if I judge this album on its own merit, I was very pleasantly surprised how good a record this was. And, first 1, 2, 3 songs, I was like, okay, good, great. And then I think the album just really took off. And there's talking offline of Jimmy, there's 11 tracks on the album. I would say 5 of the tracks are very good to excellent, and 6 of them are okay to good. I don't think there was a bad track on the record, and I really think it's solid. To me, this is one of those records that when we're kind of doing things at the end of the year, it's going to get disadvantaged a bit because it came out so early in the year and people might forget it. But for me, it's an early candidate. I don't think it'll be a top 5 record of the year, but I could see this being in a lot of people's top 10 and top 20 list for the year. I think it's that good a record. So, forget Black Sabbath or not. Good music, good pipes.
Yeah, Stefan, is there anything that you did enjoy on this album that
No, look. Maybe I came on too hard at the beginning.
Yes, you always do.
Because
yes.
that would be an understatement. I think it has a lot to do with my attachment to anything that Tony Iommi makes. I mean, he'd record an album full of farts and I'd probably buy it. So it's hard for me to look at Tony Martin without, the crew that he had, when recording Eternal Idol. And this is what I find difficult, is that this is an album where the songs were written by him and the people with him. And it's a Tony Martin album, but Tony Martin for me is, without Black Sabbath, is like, yeah, so you're an also ran. But you are right. If I was to take him out of my head as the guy who did this Eternal Idol, which incredible album that I still listen to this day, maybe I could be able to say, you know what, come to think of it, it's a pretty good record comparing to a lot of the crap that comes out these days. And God knows we've seen quite a bit. So, as a performer, as a singer, and as a recording artist, he has what it takes. It's a professional record with professional quality musicians and with songs that hold their own very well. I just cannot find it. I cannot define it within a style that I can identify with, that I can sort of get hooked on it. This album lacks any type of hooks that will make me want to play it over and over.
Anyways, that's all. That's your opinion, and then that's much respected. Personally, I would say this album was full of hooks. I'm at the other end here. I think it's full of hooks, and I think he's been vindicated from all the people who sort of been, again, sort of toss him in the corner. And you know what? I'm not sure if it was Perrin or you, Stefan, who said that Tony Iommi kind of buried him, or what was that? What did he say in his book? He just basically didn't put him on a pedestal. He kind of just dismissed him. That's the right word. He dismissed him. And I find that,
I thought it was very mean of Tony Iommi to do this, because Tony Martin, first of all, if you consider his 2 stints in the band, he stayed there quite a bit.
Yeah.
And he held the band together. He held, not the band together, but he held the marquee name, if I can use that word, that allowed Sabbath to continue using the name Sabbath. And when Iommi dismisses him as a guy, I got sick and tired of him, hanging out at the bar and bragging that he was the singer of Black Sabbath. Well, excuse me, sir. Who are you to dismiss a guy who probably worked a lot harder and probably a lot more sober than half the guys he worked with? I thought it was unfair to the individual.
I agree.
Now, Tone, you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I get it.
So,
Alan, but I'm going to pause right there.
Alan, the point I'm trying to make, if I can finish my sentence.
Go ahead.
Is that no matter how great Tony Martin is, it's not Black Sabbath. He's not Black Sabbath, and I just having a hard time separating the two.
I got it. So Thorns, go ahead, Alan, go.
I just want to add to the question Stefan had earlier. Ronnie Atkins released a fantastic solo album last year. Biff Byford, he has some good solo albums out. So it goes back. I had the same question as Stefan. Where does this fit in? How relevant is this album to today's market?
But okay, how's this? Okay, let's go around. What songs did everybody like off the album? Let's. For me, and by the way, guys, just so you know, I just found out from Ralph, who just did the interview that Alan was talking about on Almost Human. Pamela Moore actually sings on the last song from Queensryche. That is the voice, which I did not know up until yesterday. It's Pamela Moore singing on Thorns, which is, I think, is an excellent, excellent track, an acoustic piece and a sort of duet, right? Which is beautiful. I couldn't think who that was. I recognized that voice, but didn't know who it was. So it was Pamela Moore. So, all right, around the table, Perrin, your favorite tracks.
Well, so like I said, I thought there were 5 standouts, but maybe I'll give you my top 3 in the interest of time. So my favorite track, which is what I thought made the album so interesting, is a song called Crying Wolf. Because there's an acoustic arrangement in that song. And I think whoever had the idea to arrange the song that way is brilliant. And when I say an acoustic arrangement, it's not a ballad. It's like a dark, interesting song, but with acoustics and even a little bit of keyboard and organ in there as well. And I've just been listening to that song over and over. So, folks, when the record
it's
comes
the
out,
tempo. I think it's like a bossa nova tempo or a tango tempo. That's what the tempo is.
I thought it was so interesting and outside of the box, and I really think it featured. It's really why, like I said this album will be satisfying to his longtime fans, but maybe interesting to people who haven't heard him before. Now, back more on the Sabbath song, the 3rd track on the album, or so maybe it's 4th.
Book of Shadows?
Book of Shadows. I think for people who kind of like the epic, dark tale, the way we know Tony as a singer, I think that's the song for them. That's the Shining or one of those songs. Book of Shadows is definitely that, and it's vintage Tony. And then my 3rd favorite is called No Shame at All. So kind of nice, bouncy, kind of bass groove in there. A little, you hear a bit of the chunkiness and the sludginess of Sabbath, but it's not a rehash of Sabbath. So yeah, Crying Wolf, Book of Shadows, No Shame at All. I like a couple others as well, but those are my top 3.
All right,
No
Alan,
Shame
top
at
3
All. I had the
songs.
same
Go.
thing. Is they got that Sabbath groove, but with hair metal lyrics, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if writing is anyone in the group's strength, but hey, from a musical standpoint, to a pleasing to the ear standpoint, very pleasing to the ears, these songs.
Alan, 3 songs that you really liked off this
Well, I
album.
like, Perrin nailed it. I mean, I like Book of Shadows, Thorns, title track.
Title track's really good.
And, you're just talking about Crying Wolf. It's that, we're not talking about Dream Theater in this album. We're going to do all these little side tracks for 5 minutes. He carries the beats, the riff or the beat, whatever you want to call it, runs right through. I think those are the two that stand out for me.
All right, Stefan?
It's funny that you both mention just said it, the Shadows song, Book of Shadows. Because it doesn't sound like a Sabbath song, but it sounds like an extremely well constructed song.
It sounds like a Tony Martin era Sabbath song. It doesn't.
Yeah,
sound
the
like a
choir
classic
sound, it has many layers for it, which shows that it's not just okay, let's throw in any tracks we want. Like there's serious work in that songs. But I cannot help being attracted to Nowhere to Fly, Black Widow Angel, which have this old Sabbath sound to it. That's because it's what I like the best. But the fact is, Run Like the Devil, hey, good song, the dig This Is Your Damnation, usually, okay, a little acoustic diddly, do I want this? And then I decided to play it a couple of times, and I thought that wouldn't fit into a Black Sabbath record. But given the quality of the musicians in his band, I thought, you know what? It belongs there. It belongs there. It's a good song. And it highlights the fact that, he has a sensitive streak to his music, and it's nice to see it there. Like I said, for me, it's not the album I would offer somebody who doesn't know a thing about heavy metal, but I have to give it to him. He's a decent songwriter, and it comes across on many tracks.
Well, I would say not only go. Yeah.
The acoustic tracks, it's kind of like you're listening to Tommy Kiefer solo albums at some points, that's what I took away with it, because it's really, like Perrin was saying, a different type of beat and something that's completely new and refreshing.
It was outside of the box. Like honestly, the last acoustic song that Stefan mentioned, "This Is Your Damnation." It's almost like a spoken word.
Yeah.
He's speaking and scatting more than he is singing over the acoustic. And honestly, I kind of just said Black Sheep, the album, it's a risk-taking track, but it comes across well. Like I really think, for 11 tracks, it's a pretty diverse record. You have some Sabbathy stuff, you have some Tony Martin-y Sabbath stuff, and you have some really outside of the box stuff. Like the record is an interesting listen. It's not an album of 11 of the same song, one after the other, and I give them a lot of credit for that.
But nobody mentioned Damned by You, which is this horn keyboard section. It sounds like horns, but it's probably keyboards. And the great guitar, it's kind of starts off really slow. It's melodic. And then it picks up on the guitar solo, then it goes back slow again. So that's out of the box. That's sort of diverse. That's more of a musicians, and as well as like a big single, if you ask me, Damned by You. That's kind of like, and I think that the vocals on this album are stellar. I mean, his vocals are just out of this world. I mean, I would prefer this album over all three of his solo albums or the other two, plus most of the Sabbath albums. I just think he's really shining. That's just me.
Well, maybe one of the mistakes I did before reviewing that album or listening to it was that I blasted really, really loud back to back Eternal Idol and Tear. Is that how you pronounce it?
Tear.
Yeah.
And I blasted them. Thank you. And then, okay, right into Tony Martin. Maybe I should have, listened to something else, or I should not have primed myself with the old stuff. Maybe that's the mistake I made. Maybe I should re-listen, because the tracks I did write down, I said here that I felt were above average. Maybe they do deserve additional listen. Tony Martin is the only one I've never seen live with Sabbath. Here's a little story. A week before Glenn Hughes was kicked out or left or fell out, I had interviewed him about 35 years ago, and he said to me after the show with Wasp and everything, come and see me backstage. So I'm like watching the show, and it's funny, it doesn't look or sound like Glenn Hughes, and at the end of the show, no, it's some new guy named Ray Gillen. Oh shit, so I guess I can't go backstage.
Alan, were you there? Or Perrin, you were there?
I was at that show. And
there's
so
no
I
internet.
did not
No
see
one knew.
Glenn
You
Hughes
had to read the paper 2 days later to find out who the singer was. Nobody knew.
There was a guy that night arguing with me that was Ronnie James Dio who was back. I said, no, that can't be, But the point is, I've seen them with Ozzy, with Dio the first time around, and with Ian Gillan and with Ray Gillen. I never had a chance to come across live Tony Martin, so I don't know. I
don't think many of us did, because I don't think they toured much in the U.S. They did a few weeks here and there, and that was
twice. They played Metropolis, so they played theaters, right? They played 2 years in a row. They played here at Metropolis in Montreal with Motorhead opening, and I think Tiamat, if anyone remembers, Tiamat opened one of those shows. So our friend Orlando always speaks about being there. So
we got to get him on the horn. Get Orlando on the horn.
So the Tony Martin version of Black Sabbath played Metropolis here in Montreal.
So there you go.
A couple times.
It was in 2005.
I think it was for Headless Cross and then for Cross Purposes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So okay, the production, guys. The production. When you listen to this album, does this sound like, for me, I'd put 10 out of 10. The production is solid.
Yeah.
Surprisingly good for a release on a smaller label. Like I don't know what kind of budget they had, and of course, I expected, since the record company gave us a stream, we don't have a physical copy or anything like that. So the fact that we're listening to a stream, I was really surprised at how well it was produced and the sound quality.
All right.
I think, well, I don't want to cut off Alan. I want to hear your Alan on this.
Oh no, I was just going to say little things like the orchestra you mentioned earlier, Jim, on "Damned by You." All the acoustic guitars, the great sounding acoustic guitars, the chants and Book of Shadows. There's a lot of stuff happening in the background that it adds to the song, but it's not really in your face. There's a lot of little things happening in the back that I thought the production was really, really solid on.
I yeah.
The
My
vocal.
take,
I was just going to say the vocals, Stefan. What would you rate the vocals? I mean, on this album, just the vocals. If you're saying the vocals on this album,
the guy's a professional singer, and he's on cue, and his voice is still very good for his age. So I don't have a problem with his voice. And you know what's fun about the production? And old artists are probably cursing this now, but you can record a professionally sounding album these days with a tiny fraction of what you used to have to spend 30, 40 years ago, you know, what with Pro Tool and all these equipment. So it's become much easier and much cheaper to record and produce a quality recording. And I think Tony and his band were extremely good at exploiting this. And I think we need to talk about his band. I think that, you know, he's well surrounded. You know, he has, you know, Scott McClellan. I didn't really
helped
know
write
him.
the album. Yeah, yeah.
I didn't really know Scott, but the rest of his band, you know, Greg Smith, Mark Magnus Rosen, Danny Needham, these are guys with fabulous resumes. And it's good because I don't really know Tony's songwriting skills, but once you're surrounded by quality professional musicians who are there to fill the gap to whatever shortcomings you may have as an artist, it adds to the quality of the final product. And this is why, you know, this sounds much better produced than, you know, Born Again, for example.
One of my favorite albums, by the way. But anyways, As the World Burns. As the World Burns. I mean, no one even spoke about that song. That's like the wall of metal sound. I guess the whole world has heard that song because it was, I believe, one of the first singles.
See, funny enough, it's the first single, and it's good. But I think there's better songs in that first single. I think it's a safe first single in terms of inviting in people who always liked what Tony did. I think it's smart in that respect. But the album is more diverse than that song. So,
but also another note: Black Widow Angel, that bass solo in the middle. It's like, what's going on here? You know, it's just incredible bass solo right in the middle, and it sounds like this could have even been a Ronnie James Dio song. But anyway,
I think it could have been on Dehumanizer, or even exactly.
Yeah,
but I think Perrin nailed it. When you listen to that first song as the single, you're like, okay, it's
what I expected.
But then when you listen to the whole album, you say, okay, that's the one they did have to lead off, to get people like to play it safe. That's a great way of calling it. I agree.
Right.
Because there's, it was not that great of a track as a lead off, but when you listen to the whole thing, it had to be that one, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty proud that Tony has vindicated himself. Not that he needed vindication, but there were a lot of people in North America, not so much in Europe, that said, "Oh, Tony Martin." But I believe this will bring in some more folks to his camp, or fans to his camp, after they hear this album. That's my feelings on it.
Well, I hope he gets a chance to prove himself live, for example, because, as you know, a lot of bands that had a short-lived singer or a singer during their down period, a lot of them didn't do too well individually as solo artists. I mean, I know we often talk about how great Blaze Bayley is, but go see the guy in concert and you're lucky to have 100 paying customers. you know, and Tony might, I don't know if you would fall into that category, but building and maintaining a following, when the band you were in is either retired or back with their original member.
Stefan, to your point, Tony Martin was one of the only Sabbath singer who could do all eras. Like he could do the Dio and he could do the Ozzy. And the Ozzy songs that Ozzy can't even do, and the Dio songs that, of course, Dio could do, but he could bridge that gap. And when he was playing live, he did bridge that gap, which, Ozzy can't do Dio, or he could never do Dio. He couldn't even do his own songs,
There's a Cross Purposes live album that I have it someplace here in the collection. It's a little bit hard to find. And I think if you listen to that album, you'll come away really impressed of how well Tony can pull off the different eras and the different Sabbath singers.
All right. Any last words? Yeah, go ahead.
I think it has a lot to do with the fact that, Tony Martin is not a guy who grew out of, a high school dropout, joined a bunch of fellow acid heads, and suddenly becomes a rock star. This is a bona fide musician, who developed his chops over the years as a professional. So when you do that, it's extremely easy, as I said earlier, to adapt to whatever you're asked to do.
Yeah.
To get a drummer from Venom playing on a Tony Martin album is quite a stretch, but it shows the talent of the Venom drummer.
Yeah. All right, around the table before we shut it all down, Alan, what albums are you looking forward to in the new year, 2022? If you just right off the top of your head.
Well, Tobias Salmon has been extremely quiet. Here's a guy who's pumping out albums every year. And I think we're due for an Avantasia. I heard some rumors. I read it somewhere. I've tried to follow up today because I knew you were going to ask me that question. And I would love to see either an Ed Guy or Avantasia album in 2022.
All right. Perrin?
Look, there's some big name albums coming out this year. So without a doubt, Scorpions, Megadeth, Queensryche, Voivod, when those bands put out records, we're all interested. But I'll tell you the three records, Saxon also, by the way, but three bands I'm really interested in hearing. Our local friend, Rick Hughes, Sword.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
He's had this album in the can for a while. And
for like 5 years.
Well,
we're waiting.
I think we heard the In Command single last year.
Yeah,
I think we were
really
all
good.
really impressed by that.
Yeah, you're right.
So I really want to see and hear Rick's full album and Sword's full album. Number 2, and I wore the shirt for this reason today.
Oh, King's X.
King's X. I don't think King's X has put out an album of new material in over a decade. And King's X, I think you asked the question this week on the Metal Voice, Jimmy, your top 3 underrated bands. And King's X was my number 1 underrated band. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what Ty, Jerry, and Doug come up with next. King's X is an acquired taste, but I think they're great. I think they're interesting. And I can't wait to hear a modern take on King's X. But the thing I'm most looking forward to, because I think they're the most interesting band to come out in the 2000s, and you never know if you're going to get heavy metal or ABBA from them, is Ghost. So Ghost is...
Oh, look at you, Mr. Ghost.
Ghost is...
Look at you, Mr. Ghost.
And a few people on the Tobias theme, saying that, Alan...
All I got when I did that Ghost interview, all I got was, why do you keep cutting him off? Why do you keep cutting him off? All the comments are saying, why do you keep cutting him off? Why do you keep cutting him off? Just what I do.
You gotta let Cardinal Copia, Papa, you gotta let him speak. So,
Alan always laughs at me when I cut people off on interviews.
You're excited. So
Time short.
Yeah, so
Okay, I'm going to tell you.
The new Ghost record.
For me, Scorpions, I'm really looking forward to the Scorpions because I really think this time around, I hope they're going to be a lot heavier. Creator, I'm looking forward to because it's been some time. And Sword, too. I'd love to hear the rest of Sword. And Saxon, sorry. Stefan, what are you looking forward to?
Look, Scorpions, obviously, it's the one we are the most impatient about because Klaus Meine is not a guy who's losing his voice. I still think he's got it. I did not know about Sword. I always liked...
Aren't you buddies with him?
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, Dan, the drummer, is a cameraman at our competing TV station TVA across the street from CTV. Bet you didn't know
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And look, I have a soft spot for power metal and symphonic metal, which my daughter crammed through my head in the past 10 years. And I always went with her because she liked to headbang with me. And I always looked at her music sort of like, yeah. But she finally turned me on to some of them. One of her favorite band is called Within Temptation, and I really, really dig them. And I want to hear their new album, I think, which is due in a few months, uh, because I really, really got into them.
Good.
The whole
Opening
bit.
for Iron Maiden in Ottawa, if it all happens in this fall.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. I got my tickets for Maiden in Ottawa with Within Temptation opening, but the show is in October,
Yeah.
and my
Yeah, you're right.
daughter
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
due to have her baby in June.
Hey, grandpapa.
I'm going to be a granddad.
Twice.
So she's coming with me to see Judas Priest Queensryche, which means she'll be very big.
We hope.
And you guys better make room because we're all sitting together. But then she says, October, Ottawa, baby, 3-month-old, I don't know. So she may or may not come with me to Ottawa.
And congratulations on the grandchild, Stefan. That's really nice.
Metal Granddad.
Makes me feel old.
So
Yeah.
we'll have to get Rick Hughes on the show when Sword releases that album.
Yes.
And I'd love to do a Deaf Dealer show with
Oh,
Stefan.
yeah, that's
anytime.
everything. That's it.
Yeah, I was just over Jean-Pierre's cottage the other day. My wife and I, him and his wife, we had a wonderful dinner, and he made his Quebec tourtière and wrote Deaf Dealer on the crust.
Yeah.
There you go.
You didn't grow up in Montreal if you didn't see Deaf Dealer open for someone at the Palladium or the Spectrum. So I certainly did.
Alan, he used to work. He used to work at Rock on Stock back in the day. JP, right? Jean-Pierre. He used to work with you, right, at Rock on Stock.
No, the band members did not work there. They lived in the building, and once in a while they'd give us a hand. But Jean-Pierre is. I stay in touch with Mark, the guitarist, very much.
Okay.
Mike, the singer, we're friends on Facebook, but I haven't seen him in ages. But Jean-Pierre is the only one that I'm regular contact with. He's still very much the consumed musician. And when I was at his place, I saw his room where he keeps the vinyl CDs and T-shirts, and he mails them out every week. There's always somebody ordering from around the world, and he's more than happy. Ship, sign, thank you. And talk about a guy who can embrace his past. He did.
Is he going to be releasing an album? Do you know if they're releasing it? Are they going to do any music, or is that it?
No,
okay.
No, the band is spent in the sense that these are guys who met in high school.
Mm-hmm.
By the time the band broke up, they all went in different directions. And as he said, is there anything that connects me to the guys, some of whom I haven't seen in 10, 20, 30 years? Maybe not, some of them completely dropped out of music. I remember about 5 years ago, they got together for a jam session just for fun. And the singer didn't show up because he chickened out at the last minute. Yves Pedneau, the guitarist, the second guitarist who currently lives in Saguenay, says, I don't mind showing up to the session, but I no longer have an electric guitar. I'm going to have to borrow somebody else's.
That's when you know it's over.
Dan, the drummer, last time I saw him, he was playing in an Elvis cover band. And I only found out because, my wife likes Elvis. So I go to this little club with like 20 people, twice my age. And then I look at the drummer.
Wait a second.
Then? And we had a few drinks. We had fun, but he's managing bars these days. He's a businessman, you know. And you have to, don't forget that when bands get back together, hey, why don't we get back together? Very often these guys, you know, let's say you have a job that pays you a decent salary of 75, 80, or 100,000 a year for whatever you've become after you stop making music. And a guy say, let's do music again. Oh, great. When can we rehearse? Well, Tuesday there's soccer for my daughter. Wednesday there's this. Thursday I go to church. Friday my wife isn't crazy.
And on the weekend you're
Saturday is my
tired.
golf day. And then he says, okay, but let's say we drop everything. Well, I'm not going to drop my career in case we may end up doing clubs that may pay me half or a quarter of what I'm making now. So when you look at it this way, it's easy to understand why a lot of vintage bands that are not financially independent will say, not sure I'm ready.
All right. On that note, guys, I got to run. Thank you so much.
Alan, it was a real pleasure to finally be able to do the show with you.
Here, after watching for decades on the local news, it's a real pleasure. And opening up that second Def Dealer CD and seeing you writing the intro, all the liner notes, I'm like, hey, Stefan's a metalhead. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Are you on this one there, Stefan? You're on this one,
yeah.
right?
If you look,
It's this one,
if
right?
you look, you'll see the liner notes. I wrote them because back then we were living together. We were sharing an apartment, Jean-Pierre, Yves, and I. And I drove them to this, you know, with this other friend where they were rehearsing, practicing new songs. And because, I have a pretty good memory of date, places, times, names, and everything, somebody double-crossed me 10, 20, 30 years ago, I remember. So, and because I never really took any psychedelic drugs or never consumed much alcohol back in those days, I do have a pretty clear memory of what was said, what was done, who said what. So that's why essentially when the record company asked to write the liner notes, the band said, you know, Steph, we trust your memory is better than mine. I was very, very flattered. It was very flattered.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Absolutely great. And we'll definitely interview Def Dealer. So the album, but I want to go back to Tony Martin, Thorns, coming out January 14th, Battle God Productions and Dark Star Records. I definitely think, and I'm sure most of the guys here think, it's definitely worth picking up. And, congrats to Tony Martin for, keeping it going after all these years.
I was rough at the beginning of this
It's
about
okay.
the album, but I'm willing to take another listen.
We want him over. 8 on 10. 8 on 10. Check it out, folks.
Guys, it's
Good
been
records.
a pleasure. Thank you so much, everybody.
Stay well.